Alan Akaka has taught all of you earlier. I'd like to wish you a warm welcome in our Hawaiian way and say aloha. And I'd like to send a very heartfelt expression of gratitude to Pandit Devashish Bhattacharya for all his efforts to make this festival possible. How about a round of applause for Devashish? And I met Devashish and Subhashish in Hawaii maybe about 10 years ago or so, and they've toured many times throughout the Hawaiian Islands. And this past year, they were able to go to Maui for the first time and visit my family up on the Haleakala mountain. So I was born and raised in a town called Makawao on the island of Maui, and my father is a Hawaiian cowboy, or a paniolo. And I'd like to start out by playing a tradition of music that came to Hawaii from the cowboys who brought in guitars and introduced this ranching tradition on the Big Island of Hawaii, a place called Waimea. And they experimented when the Hawaiians received the guitar with the open tunings. And later on, this led to the tunings used in the steel guitar, the Hawaiian guitar. So this tradition goes back to the 1830s when the guitar was first introduced in Hawaii. And we call it slack key, or to loosen the tuning keys. Thank you so much. Mahalo. There's two old pieces from the islands. The first one was called the Radio Hula, and the second one was for the island of Molokai, one of the most laid-back islands where there aren't even traffic lights yet on the island, Molokai. And that's an island off of, there was once a group of islands, Maui Nui, Lanai, Maui, and Molokai were all part of one island. And if you look at before the guitar reached the islands, the old antiquity in Hawaii, the old sound, I'm going to change my tuning. And we have many different tunings that are used in slack key and play in a minor key. And a lot of the melodies from the ancient Hawaiian music are based on oli, or Hawaiian chants. And I wrote a piece about this place on the mountain where I grew up called Poli Poli, very high up in the mountain where this beautiful mist wraps around from the rainforest. And this piece is just an expression of the feeling of being in this place on Maui, Poli Poli, but it draws from the earlier sounds of Hawaiian music. Thank you so much. Mahalo. A song from upcountry Maui, we like to call it, and it's the cowboy country, Haleakala Ranch. Thinking of the cowboys, they actually like to have a lot of fun, and I was very fortunate to grow up around live music, and there was this little cabin way up the mountain that we called the Peanut House because it was so small. It had no electricity, and it was up so high you could look down the mountain and just see this long snake of the one road that goes from the mountain down to the main city in the island of Kahului, which isn't really a city, it's more just a town. And we used to ride horseback from Makawao all the way up through the pastures, and my dad had this key ring with about 50 different keys on it. You'd have to know the right keys to get through all of the fences and gates to get up there. And that's where I really got introduced to hearing music for the very first time growing up. Just sitting on the floor at the feet of my dad and his friends, and they would just play old Hawaiian songs. It was really a great way to hear the music, really feel it. Yeah. And I'd like to play a song that I wrote, just thinking of those days, and they were really what we call kolohe. They were kind of rascals. My dad and his buddies. I mean, they're cowboys, right? So they'd have a lot of fun, and I think that things would get a little bit more and more rowdy as the night carried on up there. And so this is a piece that reflects a little bit of that spirit in the Hawaiian people. We have a very deep reverence and love for the place we're from and for each other. There's a spirit that runs in everyone, the spirit of love that we call the Aloha spirit. But this shows a little bit more of the cowboys having a lot of fun. It's called the Kukui Nut Run. You have to imagine just going full blast on horseback down the mountain. All right. Weehaw. Thank you so much. Well, another thing that we have from the mountain, instead of just looking down the mountain, if you look up, you have some of the most amazing views because there aren't any lights. So you can see the clear sky, the starry nights. Some of the world's greatest telescopes are on the top of mountains in Hawaii, on Mauna Kea on the Big Island, and Haleakala. And I'd like to play a piece thinking about the sky. It's a piece called Aurora, thinking of the Aurora Borealis. I've been to Alaska a few times, only in the summer. And the closest I got to seeing the Aurora Borealis was in the IMAX theater in downtown Anchorage. Didn't want to go there in the winter. But this song reflects that vision. Thank you so much. Definitely more of a contemporary slack key piece called Aurora. And I'm going to change one string and go to the open D tuning. And from being around the wonderful music that I've been surrounded with all week, I've heard this tuning quite a bit on the slide guitar here in India, and it's been such an inspiration to me to hear. Last night, the students performed, and I was just really inspired by the music. And just congratulations for all you do, your hard work. Congratulations to Guruji for his dedication, teaching, his love. He's such a beautiful person, and I'm very honored to know him. Thank you so much. I'd like to play in this tuning in a Hawaiian style, and I'd like to play a piece that I wrote for the film The Descendants, and this is a film that had a soundtrack entirely of Hawaiian music, and you've seen it? How many of you have seen it? Any of you seen The Descendants? Two of you, my two buddies in the front. There's the father of modern slack key, Gabi Pahinui. He's inspired generations of musicians back home. His music is featured when the film first starts. And the first time I was sitting in the theater thinking, finally, his music is on the world stage. It was really exciting. I got what we call chicken skin, goosebumps seeing that. And his music is featured throughout the entire film. It's fantastic. But this is a song called Hawaiian Skies that was also featured in it. Thank you. So do any of you know what this is? Here in India, it's called an anandi. It's the ukulele. And like the guitar, it was something that was imported into the Hawaiian Islands, but adapted and made to fit our culture. It came from an instrument called the braguinha that came from Portugal. And the Portuguese have a very strong influence in Hawaii. And as I mentioned, my father being a cowboy, a lot of the other cowboys on the ranch that I grew up with were all Portuguese. And I know in the southern part of India here in Kerala, there's Portuguese influence there. And what I like to do with this instrument is actually experiment with some of the tunings that we use in the kiho'alu, or slack key guitar, and the steel guitar. And so I'm actually going to play in a different open tuning on the ukulele, so you can get a little bit of the sound of this instrument. And this is a song for the island I live on now, and it's the island of Oahu. It's amazing. Alan Akaka and I traveled halfway around the world to be here, and we live about maybe 6 or 7 houses from each other on Oahu. So we're neighbors in India and neighbors back home in Hawaii. And there's a beautiful part of the island that we live on. It's called the windward side, and there's beautiful mountain range. You look up and these 3,000-foot cliffs reaching towards the heavens called the Ko'olau Mountains, and there's a place as you go north from where we live that's called Kahalu'u, and this song is called Ku'uhome o Kahalu'u, my home in Kahalu'u. Thank you.